Just waiting for 2 o'clock. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Grace George, and I'm going to be a moderator today for the UK-Liberia Chamber of Commerce. And this is our climate change conference, our little conference here. As we all know, everything we buy and everything we do has a direct and detrimental impact on the planet and contributes greatly to the issue of climate change today. This is an all-important matter that we must continue to draw attention to, especially in developing countries such as Liberia. And in lieu of the COP26 climate summit that's approaching, I think, this weekend in Glasgow, we have decided to come together today in order to discuss the importance of environmental sustainability, as well as ways in which to alleviate the consequences of climate change in Liberia at the moment. Without further ado, I would love to introduce and hand over to our very own Miss Wofai Samuel. She's our Communications and External Affairs Director here at UK-Liberia Chamber of Commerce. I think you've all met her before. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Miss Samuel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grace George. Once again, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the 2021 edition of the Climate Change Roundtable put together by the UK-LCC. We've chosen an array of speakers from various fields across the UK and Liberia who will be doing justice to the various subjects we will be dealing with today. I'd like to begin with the very first speaker. He's a corporate associate in HSF's Global Energy Practice with particular focus on renewable energy, ESG, and climate change. He has extensive international experience, having grown up in Germany, educated in Costa Rica. He bagged the first-class honors from the University of Buckingham, a distinction in law from the BPP Law School in the United Kingdom, a master's degree with a distinction in law again from the UCL. I'm more than pleased and excited to welcome the Associate ESG and Climate Change, Herbert Smith, Freehills, London, United Kingdom, Mr. Janice Beals. Mr. Janice Beals, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll move very quickly to the second speaker. The second speaker is focused on preparing countries and companies for transition to a lower carbon economy. She highlights the incentives and benefits in terms of easier access to capital. That's what the company is about. She previously served Nomura as an associate, European Investment Bank as an investment risk analyst. She holds a master's degree in finance from CAS Business School and a bachelor's degree from the University of Piraeus. I'm more than pleased and elated to welcome the second speaker for today's climate change conference in person of the ESG Director and Investment Banking Associate of Stronghold Global Finance in London, Katerina Avrampoulou. It's great to have you.
Hello, it is a great pleasure to join this roundtable, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
I am sure that the conversation will be fascinating today.
Thank you. Thank you very much once again, Katerina. And the third but not the least speaker, the final speaker, is an independent consultant and founder of Nature Compact in Liberia. He has worked for years on environmental conservation issues and subjects, platforms as well in Liberia. He has international experience in conservation. He has also worked for Conservation International, FFI. He's equally consulted and worked for the World Bank in Liberia, and of course, the Forest Development Authority. He currently leads the change at the Nature Compact Foundation in Liberia. He is none other than the Executive Director, Mr. Bowen Sanyon. It's great to have you join us, Mr. Bowen.
Pleasure. Thanks, everybody. I feel very welcome. Thank you so much. It's going to be a nice conversation.
Thank you very much. So very quickly, without further ado, I'd like to begin with our very first speaker. So the very first speaker is from Herbert Smith, Freehills in London. I would like to discuss very quickly. Mr. Janice, what is your position? What's your overview on the UK's response to climate change? Generally, the world, the globe has seen UK as the leader when it comes to mitigating climate change impacts across Europe and the entire continent in different parts. So if you were to give a summary or an overview of what the UK has done so far, what's your analysis? Could you give us an insight?
Thank you, Wofai. Yes, absolutely. I'll try to stay brief because, as you say, the UK has taken quite a leadership position in relation to climate change, and we can go back quite a bit of time on the UK's action. Already in 2002, the UK has started to take emissions at the forefront and take these more serious by being one of the first countries to implement an emission trading system. So meaning that they put a price on carbon in that sense, which then translated into the European emission trading system, which was implemented only a few years later. But following the Kyoto Protocol, the UK did take action unilaterally quite early on. Now, if we look at where we are today, and that educates kind of what has happened over the past years, the UK has already drastically reduced its emissions. If we look at comparison numbers between 1990 and 2019, around 1990, the emission numbers were around 600 million tons of CO2, which have been reduced to in the high 300 million tons of CO2. So we are talking about quite a substantive reduction here. And that has been happening through a number of different factors. The UK has driven the deployment of renewable energy sources, in particular offshore wind, quite drastically over the past decades. So in 2019, we can see the UK being the highest country in offshore wind generation capacity in the world, which is something that is changing as more and more countries are taking up renewable energy opportunities, and especially with China investing heavily in the space. However, it does show for a country of relative smaller scale, it is making use of its vast coastal areas and deploying renewable energy where possible. Another factor that really helped in, on the one hand, the deployment of renewable energy, but also the phasing out of some options such as coal, was the introduction of a carbon price support mechanism, which happened about a decade ago, which is the implementation of an £18 fee against certain fossil fuel-based energy, which made energy from coal much more expensive than it would be in other, for example, European countries or generally around the world. And that has really shifted the dependency of coal within the UK to other forms of energy, largely gas in that space, and also increase the deployment of wind energy. I've spoken about emission trading, which is one factor of putting a price on carbon, which is something that has been done throughout Europe. But we can really see in the past years the prices for carbon increasing drastically. So we are now looking at a price of 1 ton at over £50, which is quite a substantial investment for companies compared to just a year ago. Under the EU ETS in 2020, the price was still below 30 euros. So we are seeing quite an increase here, which will further drive decarbonization. But looking at specific policy instruments, and I'll try to stay much briefer, we've seen the UK government outline much more actions for the future, because what we have seen so far is really the easy picks, easy emission reductions that can be effected by just applying more modern technology. However, we are now approaching areas which will become much more difficult, where we have systemic challenges ahead of us. And the UK government has outlined this in various plans. The 10-point plan, which was published last year, outlines really how it sees a shift for the industry more widely, higher investment in wind and hydrogen, as well as nuclear, to reduce the dependency on fossil fuels, as well as the shift to electrification when it comes to transportation, electric vehicles, as well as low carbon air and marine transportation, and the option for carbon capture and storage technology, which is going to be essential for a lot of areas and sectors where we will have hard to abate emissions that have to be addressed in one way or another. And then lastly, one area that the UK has identified as a point for itself, in light of its very strong financial capital of Europe status for the past decades, has been really the availability of green financing in the City of London. Now, that has been further supplemented with various other instruments, such as the UK Decarbonisation Strategy, which was published in March 2021, which just outlines different funding mechanisms for carbon capture and storage and other policy instruments, as well as the North Sea Transition Deal, which specifically addresses domestic oil and gas production and outlines a public-private partnership between the UK government and existing stakeholders to try to exchange a more favorable regulatory environment in exchange for the domestic oil sector to cut emissions and invest in these required technologies such as carbon capture and storage and hydrogen technologies that are available here. Most recently, we've seen the net zero strategy being published just about 2 weeks ago now, which outlines more the UK's vision of trying to reach net zero and outlining the relevant instruments that are required for that. But I'm very happy to go into that in a bit more detail with my next question.
Thank you very much for that extensive coverage, Janice Bills, on what the UK is doing on cutting carbon emission and, of course, climate change, mitigating the risk of climate change. My next question is for Katerina from Stronghold Global Finance. Now, Stronghold Global Finance over the years has been responsible for financing, attracting foreign direct investments into developing economies across the continent of Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look very closely on Africa, particular emphasis in Liberia, West Africa, we don't emit as much carbon. We are not, the biggest contributors to climate change globally, but we have been asked to get off, overgo fossil fuels. Now, when you look at the economic situation in Liberia, this is a country that have come out of, a lot of, so to speak, very terrible circumstances economically, which have hampered development. In your own words, since we are not very big carbon emitters, how would you advise that we create a balance between mitigating climate change and the economic impact on our societies?
Yes, sure. Absolutely. This is a very an excellent question, actually. And I do understand the frustration of the Liberia people when they feel the pressure of committing to exit fossil fuels in the near future, especially when there's this lack of economic incentive to do so. So the solution to this is one, and is called energy transition. Liberia is particularly vulnerable to climate change because it both faces existing environmental issues, as you said, as well as sustainable development challenges. So with the right economic incentives and the inclusion of the knowledge of the local communities, this energy transition will not feel as a burden, but as an opportunity. That is where the balance should be achieved. And I believe it is very important also to raise climate awareness to these communities and engage them in programs to ensure a transition from extractive models to cleaner solutions. As an example, this transition could be achieved when fossil fuel extraction sites onboard some clean technologies, for example, PV panels, and then train and educate local workers so they can develop their own clean energy projects independently. That's something that we have seen in Stronghold working in other countries as well, in our presence to Africa, and all these regions. So that can definitely work. So it's a great challenge, but also an opportunity.
Fantastic. So my next question is for the Nature Compact Liberia, Mr. Bowen. In your summary, being somebody who's resident in Liberia, what's your overview of the climate change situation in Liberia? Does Liberia feel the impact? In Nigeria, the impact is greatly felt alongside other communities and countries in West Africa. Give us an exact scenario into what exactly is happening in Liberia right now with respect to climate change. Can you give us an overview? You're muted, sir. You're muted. You need to unmute. Thank you.
Well, I apologize for that. As Katrina really stated, there are several challenges that we face as a country, as a people, to this emerging climate change issues. Let's back up a little bit. It undermines security. That's the first thing. And production. It undermines business. It undermines agriculture systems. To date, Liberia has a coastline of around 555 kilometers, and out of those 9 counties, the high sea level erosion has increased so much until that we have lost significant infrastructure. The system of farming right now has completely been altered. The predictability of rainfall. Liberia has a rainfall pattern of annual rainfall of around 3,000 millimeters. And so, it is obstructing not only one sector, but several sectors, and local communities are feeding the brunt of what is going on. Regardless of the mitigation activities that we are doing, regardless of the adaptation opportunities that we are pursuing, the impact of climate change is real. If you go across Bourgeois Island, we have over $60 million worth of one single property that has been used for livelihood purposes. It has been washed away. And if you imagine across the entire coastal line, everything has gone. People right now, because of the system, the rainfall infrastructure don't actually work anymore. 6 months of the year, half of Liberia is cut off. We don't even have roads. And so this rainfall pattern is so altering until it has affected all sides.
Thank you. I'll pick up from where you stopped, Mr. Bowen, and the next question will be directed to Janice. So Bowen has highlighted the fact that roads are affected, agriculture is affected, transportation, and so on and so forth. All are like direct and indirect results of climate change. Now, if the different countries across Western Africa and Liberia were to come together to concert efforts to mitigate climate change, taking a lead from the UK, from what France is doing, Scotland, to name a few, in your words, how would you possibly advise us to become, more adaptive? How would you advise us to set targets? How would you advise us to model from what the other countries in the West are doing to mitigate climate change, knowing fully well that to a reasonable extent we're more or less starters in this regard?
Thank you. Yes, I can only second the statement that it's impossible to hide from climate change, and a combined effort is absolutely essential. That applies throughout businesses as well as internationally. And no matter where we will be in the world, all sectors will be affected in one way or another, whether that's direct operations or supply chains, which is why this has to be addressed at all levels, whether at government or within industry. And the better that is aligned, the better the outcome will be. The main issue that we are facing with climate change is that it's not just about setting targets. Setting targets is very important, but what's much more important is actually the implementation of efficient policies that are achievable on the one hand, but ambitious enough on the other hand, and that we receive sufficient leadership from governments to set certain policy initiatives in place that enable businesses to follow through and to have the certain visibility of being able to transition towards much cleaner energy sources, to be able to transition entire industry branches and have that. But at the same time, it's important in the climate change context, which, if we look at it from a Western perspective, which is very much focused on cutting emissions and looking at the environment, and I guess here I come in as an ESG lawyer, is that we can't forget the social aspects of it. We can't leave communities behind on this, and we need to have the governance structures in place that consider social implications of climate change alongside all of the other ones, and find a concerted position that doesn't leave one of them behind, but that moves everything in one go. And that is a combination of education that has to be ensured, educating people about the implications of climate change, but also the opportunities that are behind it. and then transitioning industries, but also when looking at developing economies, to have the support by means of technology sharing and by means of financing available from developed nations.
Fantastic, thank you very much. My next question would be to Katrina from Stronghold. Now, in your opinion, if you were to advise Liberia on measures to mitigate climate change, and then you were advising them to, deviate from the use of coal, kerosene, firewood, and all these traditional cooking methods, and maybe employ gas, and then you asking them to employ other methods of like solar, hydropower, excluding these ones they're already familiar with, what other recommendations could possibly come from you?
Sure. Well, Liberia can definitely benefit in this program by really investing in projects for solar PVs or hydropower, so clean energy, essentially. So these technologies can be used as a solution to replace all the high dependence on biomass as an energy source. And because of the cost of these technologies, the cost has significantly decreased nowadays. The time to install them as well. So until grid connections is very short. So these are easy technologies, and I can confirm that there is a very, very big appetite from all investors and funding providers to invest in these clean technologies. So funding will be there. As a financial institutions, we have worked towards these projects, so clean technology projects globally, and how these projects work through power purchase agreements. So a private investment enabling environment should be created focusing on those agreements like PPAs in renewables with independent power producers, so that the contractual revenue is secured and connection to the grid will then follow. And then it is essential to support the process by which the owners of those individual generators will switch to the distribution networks. And as a policy measure to encourage this would be to support the implementation of full deregulation of the electricity sector into independent transmission distribution and generator subsectors with actual costs and tariffs. And another clean technology that could also help is waste to energy, which can also help with reducing the pollution in Liberia and improve the quality of the life and health of the local population.
Thank you very much, Katrina, for highlighting waste to wealth, waste to energy. That's a very, very key subject of discussion for another day. But my question now would be to Bowen, picking up from what Katrina said. So Stronghold is responsible, part of the mission and vision of Stronghold is ensuring that they attract foreign direct investments to developing economies, they attract finance into these economies. Do you foresee opportunities in Liberia for companies like Stronghold and the others where they can possibly invest in environmental sustainability? If there are these opportunities, what are these opportunities that currently exist for investors in terms of environmental sustainability? And lastly, how can we possibly take use of this opportunity climate change has presented to turn it into a business or maybe into a money spinner? Bowen?
Thank you so much. Thank you for Katrina for highlighting those challenges. Let's realize that Liberia has made significant progress when it comes to meeting the world halfway in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation. From 2000, sorry, I will be a little bit lengthy here. From 2004 to present, Liberia has made significant strides from policy to implementable actions on the ground to actually working in partnerships with different partners to ensure that we are on the world stage, because you have to realize that our global or our national emissions is negligible. We have less than 15,343,000 metric tons emitted from Liberia. That is completely negligible. As a sink nation, we have to be able to benefit from the technologies that come from the West. We have to be able to benefit from the capacity that comes from the West. We have the West that, we all know from all reality they are major polluters of the world. Now, Liberia has, why I'm trying to land a point is, we have done so much. We have integrated climate change response into all our sectors. To date, Liberia has over 9 sectors across Liberia that we have integrated in our NDC, from agriculture, coastal zone, energy, fishery, forestry, health, industry, transport and infrastructure, to waste. We have included all of them. So the opportunities across all the sectors is amazing, because we have done well so far. Our developmental agenda, from the agenda for development to agenda for transformation and the PRS, poverty reduction strategy, have all integrated the opportunities that come with climate change mitigation. Now, we as a country, we have offset a lot. We have offset major pollutions of the world a lot. Katrina stated that there is an opportunity for us, institutions like strong, yeah. So they all exist. Now, from our rural energy master plan that we have developed, challenges of distribution, like she rightly put, we don't have a viable system. So it is an opportunity to invest in that particular sector. Challenges of affordability. Liberia right now, I don't know if most of you know, our gross domestic product and our GDP is so low. People cannot afford a lot. Our electricity price here now is 35 cents per kilowatt. How can you reduce that to the point that it becomes affordable to local Liberians all across? Now, the stability of electricity in Liberia is another problem. So it is an opportunity for investment. Accessibility, we don't have, those basics. And you have to realize that people are still depending on charcoal. And once they are still depending on charcoal, with the absence of reliable intervention in those previously mentioned sectors or opportunities that we can invest in, we will continuously have these problems. So the energy sector is clear. We have developed a renewable energy roadmap. There is a master plan that highlights all the energies, all the opportunities that we can maximize. Now, solar power, it is an opportunity because most of the people, most of the communities are still rural. They are still outside the grid. Investment in affordable solar power alternatives are the best. Investment in cooking gas, it is an opportunity too as well. Investment in mini hydro power for communities. Liberia has millions of barrels of water, millions of water flowing all through the country, and we can maximize the development of these small opportunities to improve solar opportunities here. So yeah, it is still virgin. It is still open for investment, and we yeah.
Go ahead. I thought your audio ceased for a moment, but I can hear you very clearly. Please go ahead and conclude your statement.
Yeah, and so there is an opportunity. We are rich here. Liberia is open for business. Firms like my institution are currently providing support to the USAID, to EU, to the UNDP to pursue opportunities for making energy affordable for people. So yeah, it's an opportunity for us to exhaust.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Very well said. Mr. Janice Beal, the next question would be for you. And that question is, further laws, policies, and initiatives are sure to be announced prior to COP26, which takes place in a few days. It's drawing closer. Now, it will be interesting to observe the developments of these schemes. How will they be received at the conference, and whether or not the UK will be able to use its presidency, in mitigating climate change to influence other countries to set more ambitious climate change goals? So my question to you now is, what major changes do you foresee in the UK after COP26 2021? What do you think could happen after this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And before I move on to that question, one thing I just wanted to add to the very great contributions on the last questions from my valued co-speakers is in relation to the role of renewable energy in a decentralized system, because the beauty of it is that you can have a lot of Western states have followed the idea of a centralized grid, and that has built on decades and decades of investment into a grid that is incredibly expensive to maintain. But the chances that exist in developing countries, such as Liberia, that don't have a fully developed grid yet, is that an alternative solution would be to decentralize the system by using the combination of renewable energy and storage of really locating relevant energy needs or generation where the need exists, and therefore saving quite a lot of transmission losses and problems that other countries are experiencing because of their very centralized energy generation, and by properly tailoring the relevant needs to the country's population and also the country's wealth and just resources and renewable resources in that sense, which is something that we can hopefully develop further over the coming decade. But to address your question with regards to major changes that we're foreseeing in the UK or more globally, probably, because the way that the UK has approached things in relation to COP is, of course, to try to lead in some ways by example, and a lot of the changes are things that have been announced ahead of the discussions to try to influence them and to hopefully in some ways lead by example. So the key focus areas of the UK on the one hand have been in relation to transparency and businesses. What the UK identified is that not all large companies are already considering climate-related risk to an extent that the regulator thought was necessary, and to enable investors to make much more informed decisions about the sustainability of companies and their business models going forward. The UK has, for example, introduced mandatory reporting mechanisms for the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which will help people make more informed decisions in the investments, and effectively create a more sustainable way forward, also helping different companies and business sectors to reflect much more on climate-related influences on their businesses, to integrate those into their governance structures, and allow for us to address climate change before some of these risks crystallize, which of course would lead to much higher interruptions. On the other hand, the UK has led with very ambitious reduction targets for emissions. We're seeing a 2035 target of 78% of emissions, which is the highest to date on an international comparison. What we are hoping to see coming out of that, and that ties back to my answer earlier, that the target is the first step, but the implementation of the target is the important bit, is that the UK has given some insights into how it aims to achieve these, but there's still a lot of gaps in the relevant policy. In comparison, when the EU introduced its latest increase of its climate ambitions through the EU climate law, that was followed up by an entire legislative package that effectively amended all of the existing regulation to bring it in line with a new target in the EU that's a 45% emission reduction target by 2030. that is something that we still really need to see in the UK, of really seeing all the necessary steps, the necessary investments, and how that will crystallize. At the moment, the UK's plan sets a lot on private investment and small motivators of public funds to drive that, a model that was quite successful in the deployment of renewable energy within the UK. However, it is not clear whether that model will also translate through to all other sectors that will need to be taken along this path for climate-related changes. And one of the things that have been, for example, just to pick out one thing, criticized is that in the new UK net zero strategy, industry branches such as cement are not necessarily addressed yet, even though they do contribute immensely to emissions. So a long story short, on this entire question, what we hope to see is much more detail on how these targets will be achieved and the role that the UK will take going forward with regards to all of those relevant deliverables. One of the next ones, and then I'm very happy to pass on to my co-speakers, is in relation to climate finance. Are we going to see a lot of the developing nations and the world at large to keep up with their promise of 100 billion of climate finance being made available every year? And that's also an area where the UK has to increase its participation.
Very well said, Janice Bill. A very good place to anchor the subject on that. Now, my next question is to Katrina. Katrina, project financing, a lot to do with Stronghold Global Finance. What has Stronghold Global Finance been doing in terms of ESG? That's the department you head. So what is your strategy on curbing climate change? What has been your contribution so far? And what do you look out for projects in developing countries like Liberia when it has to do with financing? Could you run us through?
Sure, definitely. And thank you very much for being interested to our strategies and investment plans that we have for the future. We like to say that we are emerging market pioneers. So it's a great opportunity for us to participate in projects that have this climate change and ESG angle, that because we can deploy our strategy directly there. So it's not only Strongholds, but we have seen that there are other financial institutions as well, and a huge appetite from the investors that we work with towards this environmentally sustainable projects. And I believe Liberia should seize the opportunity. So there's an indisputable need to do so for the mutual benefit of the country and also the financial providers. And for this to materialize, political will is paramount. And Liberia has demonstrated that the country is committed to climate adaptation goals by 2030, which is a very, very good sign for us, because we can provide 10-year facilities and project finance facilities with very specific financial models and business plans that do work for us. And that's a great business opportunity, and it provides additional comfort as well to stimulate private investment. And the government agencies, along with private businesses, should be focused on coordinations and facilitation of these projects. And I believe that the advantage of Liberia in particular is that it is a very small country and can be quite flexible in adopting policies that attract private investment, with an emphasis on clean energy, of course, that will have a social impact as well.
Thank you very much. My next question will be to Bowen Sion. So I see a couple of people joining this program from the Middle East, and I do know that one of the companies here is an investment banking organization. So for you, Bowen, if you were to pitch to an investor who is present at this webinar on the reasons why they should invest in Liberia's environmental sustainability plan, what do you think, in your opinion, are the most attractive features? What are the strongest selling points for the country Liberia, and why should I invest in the country's environmental sustainability ESG plan? Please
Thank you
unmute
so much. Thank you so much. Liberia has developed, working from the National Investment Commission in Liberia, there is an absolute brilliant package for several sectors that you can invest in and really champion environmental sustainability. Now, one of the easiest way to get into Liberia's investment portfolio is accessibility of energy, affordability of energy. If you work on affordability, let me tell you something. Recently, the UK ambassador went on the media and he said that one of the basic challenges of the unsustainability of Liberia energy need is because there is a high degree of theft. Now he made a statement to the displeasure of several of government officials, but he struck a nerve, and a positive mind will see that this is an opportunity. One of the reasons of the 5% or less than 5% that have access to the grid for energy in Liberia, one of the reasons that there is a high theft rate is because meters are not available. The price for electricity is high. So if we have firms coming in that are investing in accessibility, in distribution, in affordability, that will be something that we can run a long way with. Now, in the rural communities, there is a major challenge: access. Solar, Liberia has abundant solar. The sun is our blessing in Liberia. And if you can make solar power, solar panels available and accessible to local communities, that is a good venture. Now, in the production side of things, companies here are investing in oil palm, in minerals, in agriculture. Their byproducts can stimulate electricity and electricity production and make it affordable. Now, Katrina was talking about connection to the grid. There are many oil palm companies that have serious byproducts that can be changed to, that can be converted to electricity or energy sources. Now, but where do they distribute it? There's no way for consumption because we are outside the grid. So investment in that side will be actually ideal.
Thank you very much. So as we begin to round off, we have less than 20 minutes to round up the conversation. Very quickly, I'd like to go to Mr. Janis. Could you please stop? I know that was recently created, and how the audience can possibly maximize the benefits that are associated with your platform. Thank you.
Sorry, I think you got out there, but if I heard you correctly, I think you were talking about.
I'll just quickly summarize. No, I was asking you to speak to us about Herbert Smith Freehills COP26 Climate Change Hub. I'm aware that your company has created a hub for climate change. How can the audience possibly maximize the potentials of this platform? Is it just for people in the UK or people in West Africa, across the continent, Liberia as well? I'd like to find out.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yes, we have created a hub dedicated to the climate conference next week and to help our clients and individuals from all around the world to access content that on the one hand provides you with background information to the relevant discussions that will be ongoing and key topics to look out for, as well as background information on that. You can access it at hsf.com/COP26. And it is very much a global platform. We provide sector insights on a non-jurisdictional basis to really identify how different sectors will be affected, not just by climate change, but also by the COP26 discussions and negotiations. And as I alluded to, there are 5 key topics that we've identified as probably central to the discussions, some of them in relation to further negotiations that will have to happen to the Paris Agreement rulebook, as well as other topics surrounding loss and damage and the international law discussions there, climate finance, the availability or use of nature-based solutions, as well as the use of carbon markets, and giving insights into those areas, what those areas really mean, their potential in the climate change context, as well as what the discussions of COP26 will center around that. And we also providing updates in relation to the discussions that will be ongoing over the next couple of weeks on that hub. So definitely check it out, and we hope you find it useful. Okay,
thank you very much, Janice. I'll be sure to check out the platform once I'm over and done with this conversation. But my next question is to Katerina. So COP26 2021 has been one of the most inclusive, it's been one of the world. Now the question is, what changes do you foresee? It was first directed to Janice. I'd also like to have your own perspective. What changes do you foresee after COP26? What developments do you foresee across Europe, the UK, and in Africa, in extension?
Sure. Well, now it is the moment, like a crucial year for global action in climate change and biodiversity. And now it is the time to put this topic in the spotlight ahead of the COP26 conversation in Glasgow happening already. And I don't know if you saw this morning, the Liberian delegation led by the president this morning highlighted actually that Liberia is a huge contributor to mitigating climate change and committed to protect the rainforests in the country. Given all this susceptibility and vulnerability of Liberia for the adverse risks of climate change. And also the UN representative of Liberia disclosed that Liberia is one of the few countries in Africa that has revised their NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, which is the instrument actually that is required of every party state to the Paris Agreement, and to produce and revise every 5 years. And that document actually sets the ambition or the target that the country will commit to do in order to commit to the global objective of reducing the greenhouse emissions. Therefore, I'm very confident that this is a step towards the right direction. But as Janice correctly mentioned, implementation is the main issue. And I'm really looking forward to working in this type of projects and initiatives for the actual implementation and financing of those projects.
Stronghold, working with Stronghold in the near future for some of our projects that are ESG and climate change related. The final question would be to Mr. Bowen Sanyon, and then we'll take a closing statement. Compact is doing in mitigating climate change. I know you had a contract with the World Bank. I know you've worked with several other organizations. Run us through. Could you just run us through a brief summary?
Well, I'm sorry, you're breaking in from my end, so I kind of missed the question, but I think
summary on what the TCN is doing in the course. Thank you.
What the Nature Compact is doing. Sorry, you were breaking in. I have bad water. Before answering that question, I would like to piggyback on what Katrina has said. Liberia, as you rightly put, we have revised our NDC. We have expanded the number of sectors that we want to make critical actions, these actionable steps. Our president has articulated that too as well. To date, we have reduced our deforestation rate significantly until it's around less than 2%. we have done everything that I think a country functioning as a carbon sink can do.
Okay, what is Nature Compact? What is Nature Compact as a company doing? What is your own company doing in this regard? I know you're
Yes, I'm about to
energy
answer.
Environmental sustainability.
I'm about to answer that question. So as a country, we have been moving in the best direction, but accessing finance, the predictable financing has been a challenge. Transfer of technology, as we all know, is still a challenge for Liberia, despite the effort that we're making. Now, what has Nature Compact seen and what we are doing at this point in time? Now, Nature Compact, as in our profile, we stated, we currently support the Environmental Protection Agency, we support the Forestry Development Authority and the line ministries to ensure that before we start anything, our NDCs was revised and updated to reflect. So from a policy perspective, that is what we did. We supported the EPA in the development of the NDCs. Now, currently, Nature Compact sits on the RED Technical Working Group to ensure that the RED implementation strategy of Liberia is implemented to the point that it benefits from RED financing or carbon financing trickles down to the community through a benefit sharing regime. That's what we have been working along with. Now, for the private sector, we have had the opportunity to work with ArcelorMittal, the iron ore mining company. We have had the opportunity to work with oil palm companies to mainstream environmental sustainability in their work to ensure that pollution is mitigated or minimized as much as possible, to ensure that best practices for production, compliance with high conservation value principles, complying with high carbon stock principles, all are mainstream into their environmental sustainability platforms to ensure that they are implementing their activities sustainably. Now, then what do we do to support local communities? We have, as of August, by the end of August this year, we conducted a massive campaign of creating awareness on best practices for the use of natural resources, especially to reduce reliance on charcoal. We have worked along with two community forests to produce charcoal briquettes from renewables to ensure that people stop cutting down the forest for their energy needs. And so those are just few of the activities that we have been invested in from the policy, from the policy to the ground.
Take the final concluding. Thank you very much. I'll take the final concluding statements from Katrina and Janice, and then I'll hand over to my colleague for the question and answer session, and then she would conclude the show. So very quickly, Janice, in 20 seconds, what is your concluding statement? What should we anticipate? What's your advice for the people in the UK and of course, Liberia in respect to climate change? I'll take the same question from you, and I'll take the response from Katrina. Less than 2 seconds, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, I can just second what Katrina said, that this is the time to take action. And as HSF, we are working very closely with our clients all around the world and trying to implement that in the form of renewable energy initiatives and other sustainable investment options that are taking place all over the place. And for anybody that has needs any assistance in relation to these, we can direct you to the relevant offices of ours around the world to make the best use out of your projects and your plans in space.
Thank you very much, Katrina.
Yes, sure. On my concluding point, I would like to highlight again that this is an opportunity for Liberia to benefit from investing in the necessary infrastructure. We have seen economies completely transform after investment. However, this can only be successful and real impact can be achieved, as Borwen said, when the local communities are involved. And investment is absolutely essential as the country faces not only climate change, but also development challenges. Therefore, as an organization, we are very happy to support and discuss all projects relating not only to clean technology and clean energy, but also in social projects that have, for example, social impact and general ESG impact. There could be digital inclusion as well, and other types of initiatives, not only environmental. So please feel free to reach out to me, as I am the ESG director in Stronghold, to discuss all these projects and see how we can make these opportunities viable. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grace.
All right, so I had some issues there. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Wow, this was a very insightful discussion indeed, I think we've had today. And I think we can all agree that there's still so much work to be done, you know, in future, and hopefully we can all work together someday to be able to, you know, push this forward and make positive change. I would like to give a special thanks to all of our amazing speakers today for your time, your expertise. I'm very much looking forward to working with you in the future, or maybe seeing you next year. In order to achieve a more sustainable future for Liberians, we must work together in pursuit of not only increasing economic development in the country, but also to focus on adaptation efforts that encourage more sustainable development that benefits the nation and her people through more climate conscious initiatives, of course. We want to thank you again, and we want to wish you a lovely day, a lovely rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right.